For most of football history, the Serie A has been where the majority of the richest teams and best players have resided, but in recent years that has not been the case due to the recent downfall of the league, though there are many reasons for its diminished status, such as the over-reliance on club owners, dated stadiums that minimise matchday revenue, and the league's lack of effort in establishing international fan bases during its heyday. The Calciopoli scandal, which revealed that a host of top clubs, such as AC Milan, Juventus, Fiorentina and Lazio, were collaborating with the league's referee organisation to select favourable referees for their games in 2006, is often the moment which fans pinpoint as to when the league fell from its pedestal. The points deductions that were given to the guilty clubs meant that the unpunished Inter Milan won the 2005-06 Serie A title for the first time in 17 years, starting a run of 5 straight league titles that culminated in a historic treble. But what if I told you that this was all by Inter's design, and that it is almost a certainty that Inter had at least a part to play in orchestrating the scandal, all while not incriminating themselves? Like all cases, we first need to look at the motive as to why Inter would try to release a scandal, and it is a pretty easy one to make. Despite spending an astonishing €876 million on signings between 1989 and 2005, the club had not won the league title during that time frame, despite regularly having some of the best players from that era amongst their ranks. This undoubtedly would have made the funder behind these lucrative transfers, Massimo Moratti, and everyone associated with Inter, very bitter, and they must have been questioning what it would take to become champions of Italy once more. How Inter managed to release the scandal while not incriminating themselves in the process involves some very clear links between powerful figures in Italian society and the nerazzurri. The scandal was ignited on the front pages of the famous sports newspaper La Gazzetta dello Sport in 2006, where it was revealed that there was credible evidence of phone conversations between senior board members of those guilty clubs and members of the Italian referee organisation. How the newspaper got these calls is an easy link to make. On the newspaper's board was a man named Carlo Ballora, who was also on the board of Telecom Italia, the company that provides and monitors telephone communications in Italy. But the important connection to Ballora was his boss, Pirelli's chief executive and Telecom Italia's largest shareholder at that time, Marco Tronchetti Prevera, who also just so happened to be the vice president of Inter Milan. Having very powerful figures in Italian society also being on boards of Italian football clubs was not uncommon in those days. After all, AC Milan's owner during this time, Silvio Berlusconi, owned the country's biggest media empire and was Italy's prime minister on 3 separate occasions. But while we all know Inter and Pirelli worked together over the years, there is also credible evidence that Telecom Italia and Inter worked together around this time. As striker Christian Vieri claims that Telecom Italia paid 30% of his wages during his time at the club from 1999 to 2005, so the club didn't get a bigger tax bill. Interestingly, in 2008, Vieri launched a lawsuit against his former club and also Telecom Italia, as it came out that club president Massimo Moratti ordered the telecommunications company to wiretap Vieri's phone to make sure he was remaining professional in 2001 and 2003, displaying that they were more than willing to wiretap conversations to aid Inter. Because Telecom Italia are willing to pay a portion of wages for an Inter player and also willing to wiretap phones for them, it should not come as a surprise that they will be more than willing to cover for them. The reason I say that is because Paolo Bergamo, the referee designator between 1999 and 2005, stated that Moratti invited him to his house in July 2002 to talk about Inter getting more favourable referees for their games, the same things the other clubs got prosecuted for. To further add to that claim, the chief investigating officer for the scandal, Stefano Palazzi, claimed in 2011 that Inter's chairman at the time, Giacinto Facchetti, also illegally contacted referee designators, but Telecom Italia handed over those phone calls after the punishments were already handed out. Despite the alleged thousands of phone calls, the start of the investigation and the date the subsequent punishments were handed out was in the span of just 2 months and 12 days. Compare that to the ongoing 3-year investigation into Manchester City's 115 charges of breaching financial regulations, and you can see that the investigation length was far too quick for allegations of that magnitude. The reason why that may be, once again, comes back to Inter. After the scandal was uncovered, Franco Carrero, the president of the Italian Football Federation, resigned, and he was replaced by a man named Guido Rossi, a massive Inter Milan fan who was even a director for the club from 1995 to 1999. and this was the man who had the final say on the punishments for the two clubs he had hated throughout his entire life. With that, it isn't a shock that Juventus got relegated to Serie B and had the two Scudettos they had won the previous 2 seasons stripped from them, and Milan got 30 points deducted from the season prior and 8 points deducted ahead of the following season. This meant that Inter got awarded the 05-06 Scudetto despite finishing 3rd and 15 points off the top, and were already in a great position to reclaim their title because they had an 8-point advantage over their biggest challengers before a ball was even kicked. And just to round it off, in September 2006, Rossi left his role once the following season had just begun to become the head of none other than Telecom Italia, which we can assume was an award for handing Inter the Scudetto. Let's be honest, if we were all in the position to allow the club we support to win a league title after a long drought, while heavily punishing our 2 biggest rivals in the process, we'd all take full advantage of that. But the Italian Football Federation's failure to address all those clear links between Inter, Pirelli, Telecom Italia, La Gazzetta dello Sport, and then to appoint an Inter fan to hand out the punishments is pure incompetence. While Inter's dominance of Italian football for the rest of that decade will probably be all that history remembers, it must be acknowledged that they had a little help from their friends to start it all off, as they orchestrated the biggest scandal in the history of Italian football.